Okay, everyone else good?
Yeah.
Rolling? Great. Go ahead, Alicia.
Can I just say something outside of the whole process arguments that have been going on here? I don't think anybody really knows what the vision is for this Olympic Games. What is the vision? What's your vision for Calgary's bid for 2026?
Well, it's not really my vision. It is the vision that came from the Bid Exploration Committee. But I've talked about it a lot, and I'm happy to repeat that today, that if we move forward, and it has to move forward on terms that are favorable to Calgarians. So, a lot of people have been saying, oh, it's so expensive, it's going to triple Calgary's debt. Well, if that were the case, we wouldn't do it. And, today we heard a lot about, other people were caught in bad behavior with the IOC. Well, we also wouldn't do that. And so the whole point of this, from the very beginning, I've said that this is going to be a very Calgarian and a very Canadian bid. It's going to be transparent, it's going to be open, it's going to be honest, it's going to be frugal, but above all, it is going to give this city the opportunity to really showcase amateur sport around the world and to retake our place as a real center for winter sport around the world. The other thing that's really exciting about this particular project is that it's been built with participation from the community, and particularly from the Indigenous community, from the ground up. So it's about arts and culture. It's about working with the Indigenous community. The idea of the endowment here is that the endowment would be split between sport facilities, Indigenous programming, and arts and culture. And I think all of that really talks about how you can use a program like this to catalyze big dreams for the future of the city.
Were you surprised that when it came down to it, Ward Sutherland had said that he was going to vote no, and it sure appeared as though Councillor Carter was going to vote no. Were you surprised that they stayed the course and stayed, at least for the next step, to go forward?
I said that we do a lot of sausage making in public. I don't know if we have to do that particular bit of sausage making in public. Let me say this, which is I am actually really pleased with the debate today. I think it was very respectful and very thoughtful on all sides. And I'm really happy that councillors, including the two you mentioned, but all of them, really spent a ton of time over the weekend considering their position, analyzing themselves, asking themselves questions about whether they were doing the right thing or not. And I think that's really helpful because, as I said last week, in this job, it's really easy to get caught on the daily irritations or the little things. And I was really encouraging my council colleagues to think about the big picture, about what we'd be giving up if we stop now, about what the opportunity cost was. And that's really what I heard in the debate today.
Would you campaign for the yes side when this comes up for the side?
I'm not sure that that would be entirely appropriate. I don't know the answer to that question. I've never been engaged in a plebiscite while I've been in office before. I think it's important that the facts come out in front of Calgarians. I'm not one to hide my point of view. So if I had a point of view, I have a point of view. I think it's extremely important that the city remain neutral and that we have enough time. It's one of the reasons why doing a plebiscite last October was a really bad idea, because it wouldn't have given enough time for yes and no groups to fully form. And I hope that we will be able to give that space and make sure that there's people on both sides having a reasonable conversation.
Why would the city remain neutral?
Who would be the champion of this bid if not the mayor?
Let me answer that one, then I'll answer that one.
Okay.
Only because if the city is actually running the election, you have to stay neutral. Now, whether that means individual politicians could take sides or not, that's yet to be determined. And to your point, who would champion it? Well, geez, this weekend we saw a huge waking up of what I think is the silent majority in the city. We saw athletes, we saw business leaders, we saw people from across the community, we saw people from the disability community really standing up and saying this is important. So I think there's a lot of champions out there.
But it's you who's been leading this. Let's be clear.
Well,
and you haven't owned that.
Well, let's just put it this way. I'd like to believe that I'm a better salesperson than that. And if, in fact, I was trying to sell people on the Olympics, I would have done it. In fact, I've stood in the scrum many, many, many times, and people have said, you've said many times, sell me on the Olympics. And I always say, that's not my job. My job is to sell you on the process. And my job is to try and come up with the best possible deal that we can then take to Calgarians, and that continues to be my job.
But I still don't know
listen,
what
if we
we're
get
bidding on. Like, I don't know.
Well, the Olympic
city...
Winter Games have about 16 sports in them. They happen every 4 years in the winter.
Yeah, but is it going to be in Edmonton and Whistler, like you suggested before? Like,
all of that to be decided, because you're not voting on anything today. That's the other reason why a plebiscite in October would have been a really bad idea. What council agreed to do today is keep exploring. Figure out what this whole thing looks like. Figure out where the facilities are. That's all part of the creation of the bid book.
What happens now with the bid corporations?
with the bid corporation.
Yeah, what's the process? What happens now?
So right now, conversations are underway for the hiring of a chair and a CEO. Both of those require supermajority of the four key members of the bid corporation. That's going on right now. Very quickly, I'd like to move to a world where each of the four parties make their appointments to the BidCo. I don't know what that looks like yet. I've said to council before that I'd like to move forward on more of a consensus basis with the partners. So council may not get its usual process of, it gets 6 names for 4 spots and it makes an appointment. So, and council's been reasonably flexible about figuring out how that might work, but I'd like to see that happen quickly.
And with the formation of this subcommittee, so are councillors disqualified from being on bid corporation?
They always were. One of the guiding principles for the BidCo is that it have no elected representation on it. I actually don't love that rule, but it was something that the other partners thought was important.
And can you flesh out exactly what's going to happen on Monday with regards to moving over the terms of reference on the subcommittee as well?
I wish I knew. That's one of the reasons why I thought, let's just create some space for that now that council has made that motion. So council approved the creation of a committee with 4 members plus me. So we have to figure out some technical things about to whom does that committee report, what would the process of how that committee works look like. So that should be relatively easy to do. It'd be cut and paste of previous task forces essentially.
And when do you expect
So that'll come to council on Monday. If council approves the terms of reference for that committee on Monday, it can appoint the members right away. So that's number 1. Number 2 is that committee, actually, I feel a bit bad that I wasn't into the chair for half of that meeting because the recommendations for committee were a bit of dog's breakfast. It wasn't clear what committee was looking for direction on. So we have to have much more clear recommendations for council's approval, which are, endorse the public engagement plan in principle, start the work on a plebiscite, and likely make a decision on whether you want to have a public hearing of council, as non-statutory public hearing of council, as part of the decision. So at some point council needs to agree on those things. So they may choose to just go forward and agree on that next week, or they may ask the subcommittee to go off and do some more work on it.
So when do you expect the plebiscite to be held?
Well, I think that we've got a pretty narrow window, sometime between October and early 2019. I'd like to see it earlier rather than later, but you actually have to have the deal in place to take to the people first.
Ok, un mot en français pour Radio-Canada.
Oui.
Un commentaire sur ce vote. Est-ce que ce vote était utile?
Oui, je suis aujourd'hui. Je crois que le vote était très, très utile parce que c'est important de continuer le processus. C'est important pour la population de Calgary d'avoir tous les faits. Et pour moi, elles ne sont pas là ici.
Okay. Et du coup, faire appel au public, à la population, par un plébiscite, ce sera prévu pour quand? Est-ce qu'on a déjà des dates?
Ça, c'est toutes des questions qu'il faut participer avec le public sur les questions des chiffres, sur les questions de dette. Mais aujourd'hui, on a fait une décision de continuer la discussion et je crois que ça, c'est très, très important.
Vous comprenez que certains conseillers soient inquiets, 9 contre 6, c'était finalement assez...
Pour ce qu'on soit 9 contre 6, c'est vraiment une grande majorité. Et pour moi, c'est une déclaration très claire que le Conseil veut continuer.
D'accord, donc la prochaine étape, c'est ce sous-comité la semaine prochaine.
Oui, c'est de développer un sous-comité, that's a fun word in French, c'est de développer un sous-comité et ça va faire la semaine prochaine.
Is this bid process, do you think that this is going well?
And last question, we gotta go.
It's a very incisive question. Because when you try to do something different and you try to do something innovative and transparent, as I said in council, you end up making your sausage in public and sometimes people don't like the hot dog. But ultimately, I think that's better. I think it would have been much better to go through this with all the missteps and all the 2 steps forward, 1 step back and do it all in public than it would have been for the previous council to vote for a bid and then the new council to sort of get an update that this is how much it's going to cost and let's go to a plebiscite or not. So yeah, do I in some ways feel like there's been a lot of headaches that could have been avoided through a more traditional process? Absolutely. But is it the right thing to do if we're truly serious about reform and modeling that kind of behavior to the IOC? Was it the right thing to go this very transparent place, warts, missteps and all? I think so.